guys, I'm ready for another story time with you. This is a book that I have read before and I really like it. It is called If You Spent a Day with Thoreau at Walden Pond. Now this is a fiction book, but Henry David Thoreau, who this book is about, was a real person. And at the end of the book, it tells you a little bit about him, some things that I will tell you. You know how we talked about Martin Luther King and how he would stand up for what he thought was right. Henry David Thoreau also stood up for what he thought was right, which was sometimes different than what other people thought. But he wanted to live his life the way he wanted to live it, and it didn't matter what other people did. And today, it's kind of a rainy, dreary day outside, and I thought this was a good book for this rainy, dreary day. And also, everything in this book is just things that you can go outside and do. So instead of going somewhere, you can just go outside and experience most of these things, probably right in your backyard. This book also has beautiful illustrations. If you spent a day with Henry David Thoreau, you would need to get there early because Henry wakes with the sun. If you spent a day with Henry David Thoreau, you would knock on the door of Henry's tiny house on the shore of Walden Pond. Hello, Henry. You would look inside and see nothing but 3 chairs, a table, a desk, and an old bed. Yet Henry has just what he needs. And that's true. That little cabin that it showed on the first page, let me go back. This little cabin, Henry David Thoreau built that little cabin all by himself out in the woods, just big enough for what he needed to have. And inside, that's what he had. He had his writing desk. He had 3 chairs. You know why he had 3 chairs? Just in case company came by. He needed only 1 chair for himself, but he always had 2 extra just in case somebody stopped by to visit him. And he had his bed, and that was all that he needed. If you spent a day with Henry David Thoreau, you would sit on the soft pine needles behind the house and drink cold, fresh Walden water. Living a simple life is the best way to be happy, says Henry. Now, you probably don't have a pond at your house that you can go drink water out of. If you have a pond at your house, you probably shouldn't drink water out of it, but you could go outside and sit in your backyard and drink water. You would row out onto the pond, gaze down deep, and glimpse a beautiful gold and emerald fish. Swish! It's gone. I bet Henry David Thoreau did a lot of fishing. You would help Henry weed his bean patch. I like to make the earth say beans instead of grass, Henry says with a grin. If you spent a day with Henry David Thoreau, you would head down paths that wind back and forth through leafy woods, but Henry knows the way. You would sometimes stop and listen. Shh, Henry says, holding a finger to his lips. That's a robin calling to his friends. And that gentle song is the coo of a mourning dove. And there's the screech of an angry jay. If you spent a day with Henry David Thoreau, you would wade in a sandy pond and let the cool weather lap against your feet and feel the sun on the back of your neck. You could totally go out into your yard and listen to the sound of birds and see if you can identify them and know what one is. We know what a mourning dove sounds like because Miss Meg showed us. You would point to a hawk high above, soaring and tumbling over and over. So wild and free, says Henry, and he writes it down in his notebook too. So Henry David Thoreau was an author, and he took lots of notes and wrote lots of things. I bet he had a nature journal just like Miss Meg made. If you spent a day with Henry David Thoreau, you would hike past Fairhaven Hill, where the huckleberries grow. Pick the ripest ones and nibble them as you roam. Yum. Does anybody have a huckleberry tree? Huckleberry bush? You would spy from your hiding place a mother partridge shooing her chicks under the dry leaves. See them? They're camouflaged under there. Look at her tiny brown eyes staring out. If you spent a day with Henry David Thoreau, you would climb a farmer's fence, shortcut across a pasture, and call out to the cows. You would rest on the grass, lean back, hear the leaves murmur, and feel the soft breeze against your face. Henry calls it dreaming awake. If you spent a day with Henry, you would share a loaf of his homemade bread. After lunch, you would feed bits of cheese to a tiny mouse and laugh as its whiskers tickled your hand. You would follow a fox across the meadow, running far behind it, losing the track, but finding it again and again. "Be quick," says Henry. You would lie on the ground, staring down, watching an ant war, red versus black. To Henry, little things matter as much as big things. If you see a fox outside, don't chase it. If you spent a day with Henry David Thoreau, you would relax together, watching. Late afternoon clouds seem to float on Walden Pond. "Ah," says Henry, smiling. "From here, the pond is like a wide-open eye staring up at the sky." If you spent a day with Henry David Thoreau, when you left, you would glance back in the gathering dusk and wave. You would see Henry writing in his journal by the light of his kerosene lamp. He would look up and call, "Remember, have an adventure every day." "Goodbye, Henry, and thanks," you would call back with a happy smile, if you spent a day with Henry David Thoreau. Now, back in the back of this book, it tells a little bit about some actual facts about Henry David Thoreau, too. He is not alive anymore. He was born in 1817 and died in 1862. And he lived in Massachusetts. His most famous book is called Walden. Remember, Walden was the name of the pond that he lived by. He built his little cabin for a total of $28.12. He found almost everything that he used for his cabin, or went out and cut down his own logs, or made trades for things instead of having to spend money because he didn't really have a lot of money. He lived there for only 2 years, and then he decided to move on and do something else. He had that experience of living alone in a cabin out by himself, and then he was done with that, and he was ready to move on for something else. Let's see, what else does it say about him that you guys might like to know? It tells some of his things that he wrote. Henry David Thoreau wrote or said many things that people still read and remember because his words seem beautiful and true. Of course, he was writing over 150 years ago, so his language can sometimes be difficult to understand today. Here are some of Thoreau's thoughts with modern interpretations. So I'm going to read you what he actually wrote, and then it will tell us what it really means today. "If you have built castles in the air, put the foundations under them." He's not talking about real castles. What it really means is, if you have dreams, work hard to make them come true. You know how we talked about if you have a wall, you can work hard to knock it down. It's not a real wall. He's not talking about real castles. He's talking about dreams. If you have dreams, you work hard to make them come true, and you can do that. Let's see, what else did he say? In wildness is the preservation of the world. That means going back to nature will always make you and the world better. What a great time for us to hear that right now, while we're at home and we can't really go out and do things. Going back to nature will always make you and the world better. That is something that we can do right now, is go to nature, experience nature, play outside, build a fort, make a fairy garden outside. You can do anything you want to outside in nature. Let's see, I'll read one more. Oh, here's a good one about reading books. How many a man has dated a new era in his life from the reading of a book. That means reading a book that means a lot to you can change your life. So we know that reading is important, and we want to make sure that we keep reading because it can change you. It can change your thoughts. It can give you new ideas. It can inspire you to go and do something good for the world or inspire you to create something beautiful. We should always read every day. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Bye.